who's actually going to get the most out of the Shop Fox W1888 10-inch hybrid table saw? Is it a good fit for a weekend hobbyist who only has a corner of a garage to work in? Or does it belong in a full-time shop where the budget can stretch to a larger cabinet model? And for the average buyer wondering if the price is justified, does the saw deliver enough everyday value to make the spend worthwhile? Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. When I first started looking at hybrid table saws, the biggest hesitation was the in-between nature of the category. You're promised the portability of a contractor saw with some of the precision and dust control of a cabinet unit, but the reality can be a mixed bag. The first thing I asked myself was how the W1888 would sit in the cramped space of a typical garage or hobby shop. Its floor-toteable height sits at a comfortable 33 inches, meaning you don't have to hunch over like you would with a low-profile benchtop model, yet it's not so tall that you need a dedicated lift. The distance from the front of the table to the blade center is about 22 inches, which is enough clearance to slide a sheet of plywood onto the fence without the blade hitting the table legs. In my own setup, that clearance turned the saw into a surprisingly smooth entry point for a quick rip before moving the material to a larger station for finish work. The motor on this unit is a 1-horsepower induction motor, which for a 10-inch blade translates to a respectable cut depth of roughly 2 inches at a 90-degree angle and about 2 inches at 45 degrees. For anyone who mostly works with standard inch plywood, MDF, or hardwood stock, those numbers hit the sweet spot. I ran a few test cuts on an inch oak board and the saw held its speed without stalling, even when I pushed a little extra feed rate for a faster rip. The hybrid design means the motor is housed in a metal base that reduces vibration, so the cut stayed clean without the chatter you sometimes hear on cheaper benchtop models. One of the practical strengths that shows up only after a few weeks of use is the built-in riving knife. Safety is a big concern for anyone who isn't a seasoned pro, and the riving knife on the W1888 moves with the blade, keeping the kerf from closing and reducing kickback risk. In my garage, where kids sometimes wander by, that extra layer of protection gave me peace of mind that a simple blade guard alone can't provide. It's also a time-saver, no need to reach for a separate split blade guard or install an aftermarket safety system. However, the saw isn't without trade-offs. The table surface measures about 24 by 30 inches, which is adequate for most 48 sheets when you use a fence, but it's tight if you want to run a full sheet without making multiple passes. I found myself occasionally having to support the far edge of a plywood panel with a second hand or a roller stand to keep the piece flat while the blade passed. If you routinely cut large panels in one go, a bigger table would be a noticeable limitation. The rip capacity, which is the maximum distance you can pull a board past the blade, sits at around 22 inches. That works fine for most standard lumber sizes, but it's not enough if you need to rip 212 stock or larger workpieces in a single pass. Another hidden consideration is dust extraction. The W1888 includes a 2-inch dust port, which is compatible with a typical shop vac. In practice, the suction was decent for light cuts, but when I was ripping a stack of inch pine, the dust collection struggled to keep the workspace clean. Adding an inline shop vac with a larger hose helped, but it does add another piece of equipment to the mix. If a spotless shop floor is a top priority for you, you may need to budget extra for a more robust dust extraction system. So who should walk away with this saw? If you're a hobbyist who wants a machine that fits into a modest shop, can handle everyday lumber and sheet goods, and values the safety of a riving knife without paying cabinet saw prices, the W1888 is a solid match. It's also a good entry point for someone transitioning from a portable circular saw to a stationary setup. The hybrid design feels less intimidating than a full-size cabinet model and still offers enough power to make the upgrade worthwhile. On the flip side, if you run a professional shop where you're cutting thick hardwood billets, need a larger rip capacity, or demand a massive table for extensive panel work, you'll likely outgrow this unit quickly. The limited table size and modest rip capacity become bottlenecks when you're trying to keep production flowing. Likewise, if you're extremely particular about dust control or you need a saw that can handle 2-inch depth cuts for specialty laminates, you'll find the W1888 falling short of those niche demands. When it comes to price, the saw sits in a